I caught my wife cheating and made her life a living nightmare. She was struck dumb when I forced her to expose an affair in front of everyone. She's pleading and crying with me not to destroy her life, but I forced her to do more. I'm 39 and my wife is 37. No kids, by choice. The long and short of it is that I am worried I'm letting my anger get control of me and my actions. The backstory. Shady things and alibis. She was doing shady things. Staying out late, phone protection etc. She stayed with a friend a couple times and when confronted even told me to ask her friend. I did and her friend corroborated. I had a gut feeling, but she always had reasons, blowing off steam, stress relief etc. I finally snooped and caught her. One night she said she was drunk and staying at her friend's again. I drove the 40 minutes to her house and my wife wasn't there. Not that she left her car at the bar. No one at all was home. I started snooping and I even stayed awake until 2 a.m. one night so I could get my hands on her phone, Recovery Plus enabled GPS tracking. Her affair with a married co-worker came to light immediately. I saved and sent all the info to myself. I was crushed by what I saw and read. It wasn't just physical, it was emotional too. I spent the next 24 hours just stewing and getting angry. She acted like everything was great between us and then this crap. So on Sunday, I confront her. I confront and am really harsh about my terms. I need to know if I went too far with boundaries and rules. I confront. I start by asking her if there is anything she needs to tell me. She says no. I tell her she has one chance. She needs to tell me everything and keep in mind I know far more than you imagine. Anything less than total honesty and it's over. She calls my bluff and says no again. I just start walking away. She starts crying and confesses. It's the usual things I'm sure you all heard. Paid attention to her, things stagnated between us, it just kind of happened etc. I listened to it all and so far she's being honest and answering my questions. I ask her for her phone. She seems reluctant but I again start to walk away and she relents. We continue to talk for another hour and then when we are both down crying and talking I tell her this. She's begging for a chance to reconcile. I tell her we can try but she needs to do everything I ask. If she strays in any way it's over. If she resists any of my demands it's over. She agrees to everything. I make her tell the co-worker's wife in person. So that night I unplug the computer, I take the Wi-Fi, her phone, the iPod, anything that can be used to communicate with the outside world and I lock it in my car, with the spare set of keys. I also put her car keys in my car too. She's concerned and worried but I tell her that if she wants her stuff back just say so. I will give it back right away, but I'm also done with the attempt to reconcile. She relents on that ultimatum. Which I had to use more later. Secure that I have given her no means of contacting anyone we try to sleep. It doesn't go well for me. I'm not sure if I slept at all. I'm sure she didn't either. I slept on the couch. In the morning I get her phone and tell her to call into work. I already called in before. I tell her that she and I are going to co-worker's house and telling his stay-at-home mother wife in person. This is when she really loses it. She's pleading and crying with me not to make her do this. I was so angry at her defending the other guy. I bawled my anger down and just said okay. The marriage is over. I'll find a lawyer and you should too. This time she didn't relent and I started looking up a lawyer on my phone. She was talking to me the whole time but I ignored her. Only when I called one and was on the line did she finally relent. She was crying and very, very emotional. I started to feel bad and almost relented myself. But that familiar anger came back and I went through with it. We drove to his house together. We knocked on the door and when the woman answered my wife had to tell her. It was probably the stupidest decision I've made in all this. I don't wish having to see that kind of anguish on anyone. The guy's wife turned angry and I just handed her all the printouts of their convos and we left. My wife was crying her eyes out the whole way home and was extremely upset. I made her tell her parents and siblings. Once we got home, she went to the bed and cried her eyes out. She couldn't even look at me. I just felt angry still. I was playing fantasies in my mind of them together. So the next step in my angry mind was to make her call her parents on speakerphone and admit to the affair. This was also extremely hard, and she also begged me to not make her. Once again, I simply said this or divorce. Her parents wanted to talk to me, but I told them we were talking things out and if they could give us some space. Her siblings were actually more sympathetic to me than her parents. I made her end her relationship with the friend that provided cover. This time I did the talking. I yelled some, which I'm not proud of. I also, while still on the phone, made it very clear that if my wife ever contacted her or responded to any contact from her, no matter how innocent or how long has passed, I would instantly divorce her. I made her agree to a new job and made a set of eyes at her workplace. We called a mutual friend that works with her. One that is more my friend than hers. I gave him a rundown of what happened and that I appreciate his support. My wife was really opposed to this for fear of the info getting out at work, but I needed to have someone at her job that would have my back while she still had to work there while she looked for a new job. This all occurred on that Monday. I think the reason she didn't fight much was that initial shock and all the emotional turmoil going on. The rest occurred over the next couple of weeks. For your information, I gave her phone back at the end of Monday and re-established our internet. And of course her keys were returned. She voluntarily took the next couple of days off work, as did I. I made her do the following, which wasn't anything that I had to fight for. No contact with other men. No drinking. No bars, clubs, or any other social event without me. Transparency and access to everything. Write a letter and a timeline to me. Some of those are temporary and the length varied by each one. I still slip sometimes. It's been really rough and we are both kind of going through the motions. Sometimes we have a little fight over the next few weeks and I'll just snap, yeah? Well, at least I haven't eaten anyone else's stuff. Every time I do, she feels terrible and cries, and I feel terrible and apologize. We have some bonding moments. But I'm not happy with the way I respond. It's like I don't even have time to think before the words are out of my mouth. Our mutual friend at her office tells me everyone knows and she's miserable. She hasn't found new employment yet, and our buddy tells me everyone knows. He swears he didn't say a word, so maybe the other man. Hey, other man, I swear I'm smarts. He tells me my wife is an outcast. People always stare and that she seems very miserable while at work. The other guy is no longer even there. He quit 1 week after we told his wife. I feel terrible because I could have handled this softer. Her family gives her a hard time, and in obsession to hearing it from me, she heard it from all them. Some days I feel like she deserved it, and some days I just feel so badly for her. I love her and she's a shell of a human right now. Emotionally drained. Well, that fits her to a T right now. She has a glossy look in her eyes sometimes and just looks exhausted. She still cries and we have good days, but the more I think about what I did and how I made her blow up her entire life to appease my bruised ego makes me feel like crap some days. Oh, and during that first 2 weeks I was open to telling everyone. Hanging out with friends and she has a moment and goes to the bathroom crying. They ask what's wrong. I just told them. I busted her cheating. So a lot more people, including people that had no real right to know, also know. So I'm really torn. She's done some things wrong. Obviously. But she's done a lot of things right towards reconciliation. I see how much pain she's in and I want to hold her and help and tell her I will make it better. Other days I think she deserved. I don't know what I'm asking. I know that if you asked me if I went too far I would say yes. But it's done and I don't know how to make it right. I don't want to appear to be easing up in the idea of cheating being okay, but I want to let her know I hate how I acted. Edit to add, I haven't yet, but I am making her sign a post-nuptial that if she cheats again I get everything. Wife flew out to meet her friend but ended up having one night stand and now cries like a goat 'cause I found out. I met my wife in an online book club about 10 years ago. At that time I did not know anything about her besides the books she was reading. Found out that she was going through chemo/radiation for stage 4 metastatic cancer, so I messaged a couple of guys in the group asking if they were willing to send me small gifts so I can organize a care package for her. She received the package in the mail and was so happy, thankful, and appreciative. We started to message each other privately, became friends, and eventually it blossomed into a long-distance relationship. I continued to send her letters and small gifts which she would open after every chemo appointment until she finally went into remission. We lived 1,000 miles apart. I flew to visit her, she flew to visit me. After all the back and forth, she eventually moved to my state. We bought a house together in 2015, got engaged the same year, and got married in 2016. On the surface, it was a great marriage. We had one argument in the entire 6 years of marriage. I was making good money, which gave her the opportunity to land her dream job, which she still holds today. We had a great income and no kids. Remove the stressor of money and kids out of marriage and there is little left to argue about. If we had disagreements, we resolved them within hours, or so we thought. I will expand on this later. In 2020, we sold our house and moved 1,000 miles to live closer to her family. She had a hysterectomy in May 2021 for chronic bleeding, required 2 units of blood prior to surgery because her hemoglobin was critically low. I was fully supportive of her. She took 12 weeks off work to recover. I took 6 weeks off work to care for her. The surgeon cleared her to return to work after 6 weeks, but I was supportive of and encouraged her to take the full 12 weeks off to recover. After I returned to work in a week before she was scheduled to work, she flew out of state to see her female friend and co-worker. During that stay, she had sex with another man with whom she was having an emotional affair with for months. I don't know if I was the first person she had sexual experience with post-surgery or if it was him. He knew that she was married. How I discovered that cheating was completely by accident. Last weekend, she was out of town for a conference. A couple of things, which in retrospect had no direct relation to the affair, occurred that gave me a bad feeling in the gut, and I went through her computer for the first time in our marriage. I saw the explicit texts and photos. I picked her up at the airport, drove her to our house, parked in the driveway, turned to her, and said, "Look at me. I know everything. I know that you've been cheating on me. I have seen the photos and text messages. Here is what is going to happen. You are going to go inside and grab your essentials. You can go stay with your parents or friends. The next time you will hear from me will be through my divorce lawyer." She did not deny anything. As she was walking through the house to pick up her belongings, I was walking behind her because it felt like a stranger was walking in my house and going through our belongings. I never raised my voice or my hand at her, just like during our 6 years of marriage, during the entire process. After she left, I turned on the alarm system and stacked chairs against the front door. I was afraid that she'd come back if I fell asleep. It felt like an intruder was breaking into my house. I slept for a total of 50 minutes during that last 24 hours. After she left, my intention was to call a divorce lawyer the next day. I could not get a day off from my work. I texted her to come to the house. The title is in both of our names, so I was not legally allowed to kick her out before I left for work. I wanted to make sure that she was not going to do anything crazy in the house alone. We agreed to talk after I returned from work. We talked for 2 days in a row. There was a lot of crying from both of us. What looked like a great marriage on a surface was marred by the lack of communication for 6 years from both of us. We both avoided conflict and instead chose to bottle in our feelings. We learned more about each other in 2 days than we did over the course of the entire marriage. While she was away on her conference trip, I drove 1.5 hours to help her 90-year-old grandfather get out of bed, provide incontinence care, toilet him, help with breakfast, and give medication. This was the second time in 2 weeks. She texted me how much she loved me and how she appreciated what I was doing for her grandfather. She claims that she was going to break up with me after returning from the conference. Break up under the guise of falling out of love with me and not mention the infidelity to avoid hurting me. I honestly don't believe her and have a strong feeling that she'd have continued to string me along. Every single issue could have been resolved if each one of us put in just a little bit more effort. While we shared some common interests, we could not relate to the interests which were most important to each one of us. On the first day, I blamed her entirely. On the following day, I started to blame myself for not being an attentive husband. After working from home all day, all she wanted to do was talk to me after I came home from work. I just wanted peace and silence after slaving away for 12 hours. She wanted to talk about social and personal issues which were important to her, but I didn't even offer a listening ear because I could not relate to her experience. These are just a couple of examples. There are dozens of others. And I don't claim to have been a perfect husband. I have my faults. But I genuinely tried to make her happy. At least as much and in ways I could. I found her at the lowest point in her life: misuse of previous marriage, cancer, sexual assault, anxiety, depression, seizures, and future alcohol misuse. Excluding the affair, we will be getting divorced at the highest point in her life. She is in cancer remission, abstinent from alcohol for 1.5 years, no seizures for 3+ years, her anxiety/depression are better controlled, and has a great group of friends and family who live close by. And I'm at my lowest point now. I uprooted my life for her after the move and have no local support. I haven't told my parents because they will be devastated. I'm afraid that the news will send both of them to the hospital because they loved her so much. We are currently living as roommates/friends in our house. We have agreed to make the divorce and transition as smooth as possible for both of us, even if it takes months. She offered for me to keep the house, take the newer car, keep both of our cats, etc. I can see how remorseful she is. Yesterday, we attended a virtual Al-Anon for family meeting, therapy for family members of alcoholics. What resonated with me was that family members should not blame themselves for the behavior of alcoholics. I feel like I'm blaming myself for my wife's infidelity when I'm the actual victim here. I'm here for support from others who've gone through similar experiences. I'll need to learn to trust my future partner when the person whom I had complete trust in blindsided me like this. My first session with Infidelity Survivors Anonymous is this Saturday. Thank you for letting me vent. Edit: I will add this detail for some context and not to excuse or give a legitimate reason for her to cheat. She was my first serious relationship. I had a couple of flings before her, but that did not progress to anything more serious because of a problem I had, ED. And while we had a spicy sex life when we were in LDR, once we started living together the problem returned. At one point early in the relationship we went many months without having sex. She begged me to see a doctor, but I kept putting it off. Entirely my fault. I was younger, less mature, and frankly embarrassed. Eventually, at age 29, I'm 33 now, I got tested and found out I had very low testosterone levels. And I don't know how many years I've lived this way. Probably a decade, because I always felt like I had less energy than my peers. I received a T replacement at that time and felt like a new man. We started having sex again, but admittedly it was never as good as it was in LDR and never lived up to the fantasy we had prior to living together. There were still times when I couldn't stay hard, though they were much less frequent than before. She did say yesterday that while the sex was less frequent, she did enjoy it when we did have it. What I lacked in one area, I made up for in another area, giving her oral which she loved. And vice versa. Recently, I started to feel like my T levels were low again. Now more mature, I went to get tested and have a follow-up visit next week for results. Again, this is not to minimize her infidelity. But if I talk about her flaws, it's only fair that I mention my own to paint the complete picture. Wife went for groceries and saw a hot guy. Her instincts immediately made her have a one-night stand, so I told her to move out. My wife of 5 years cheated by sleeping with a stranger she met in a store. They exchanged numbers, spoke, had drinks, and she took him to her hotel room and had sex with him. She confessed everything to me and firmly admits that the story, as crazy as it sounds, is true. Our marriage had been pretty shaky, and this was the reason for her taking a break and booking a hotel room in the first place. She went out on the town, and this is where she met the stranger. We still love and care about each other, however, and it would be nice for us to remain friends. Is this healthy? Secondly, she stayed in touch with the person she had sex with after their encounter, and she has developed a strong connection and liking with this person even though she has only known this person for 3 weeks. She refers to it as love at first sight. She claims to still love me. She has since moved out and now has her own place. I told her that if we were to remain friends in any capacity, then you can't remain in a relationship or in open communication with the person that you've cheated on me with. She's finding this to be a difficult task because she does not want to lose our friendship, but also has somehow developed a deep connection with her 3-week-old dealings with her male equivalent of mistress. Is this a reasonable request? Edit. Thank you guys for the kind and not so kind words. I appreciate all the advice. I will seek out a therapist to get through this as it is indeed a painful moment in my life. I guess deep down I know none of this was a good idea, but maybe I was shocked by her admission and further freaking audacious actions coupled with the reality of the last 5 years of building, traveling, fun and happy times, and my once best friend in life and first true love all coming to an end. I am definitely allowing my emotions to hold me hostage here. The friendship obviously would not benefit me in any resourceful way, but I can see how it would benefit her in many ways. A security blanket, as someone put it. I also agree that at this point I cannot dictate who she sees or befriends. Knowing that she still wanted some kind of relationship with the guy that she cheated on me with, I should have simply declined the mere notion of us being friends. To those seeking more details. No, we don't have kids. I have pressed her on the met at a store story several times, but she doubles down on it. Says she understands that the behavior was unsafe and unhealthy, but she was in a vulnerable place due to the marital funk when she first met the guy and accepted his number and his request to have drinks. Also blames some of her actions on alcohol. This woman came into my life when I was in a dark place myself. She is a big reason why I am the person I am today, as she's helped build me up in many ways. So it seems to me that one of the reasons why I still wanted to be there for her after what happened was probably to show gratitude. As some have pointed out, it probably has to do with not having better self-esteem as well. I'm also aware that she can have *C* idle thoughts and speak in really dark terms when she goes through situations like this, and she has during this process, especially when she thought she was going to be homeless, etc. But I am coming to the realization that the same way I must now seek help to better myself, so does she. She cannot expect me to care more for her than she does for herself. Especially in a moment like this, I must prioritize myself and my mental health if I am to move past this. Throughout the years we've had some marital issues. Typically in the form of verbal misuse on both ends. When arguments occur, some pretty horrible things get said both by me and by her. We tried to change this, but it didn't seem to be working out. She claims that this is what drove her to do what she did. The break in question was not a separation. We were having discussions on whether we should call it quits or not after our last big fight. She then said that she needs space for herself, and this is when she went out of town for a couple days. She even asked me to join her on the first day/night, which I did. The next day is when the situation happened with the stranger. I still cannot make sense of all of it. Some of it definitely seems made up and like she's lying. Others just seem like pretty irrational behavior of which she's blaming on things that I've said in arguments. Whether it was planned or not, or done out of anger, it's blatantly disrespectful no matter how you look at it. If we were to end things, fine, let's do that first, then pursue your rendezvous. As much as it still hurts and as painful as all of this is, I am now filing for divorce. I stopped all contact with her, except for how to distribute our assets, and I'll be getting a therapist. Thank you for your time, words, encouragement, and advice. It has helped me gain some clarity on things I was in obvious denial about.